Hello, hello. We don't have an official moderator, so we're going to self-moderate, right?
Yes.
Sure.
That's the plan.
Should we start with a quick round of intros?
Let's do it.
I'm Amanda Cassatt. I started working in the space in about 2015, was chief marketing officer at a company called Consensus, which is how I helped bring Ethereum to market. Started something called Ethereal, where we actually live auctioned the first ever NFT. After that, started a company called Serotonin, which is the largest Web3 marketing firm and also does other professional services. We've worked with Sotheby's, we work with CAA, and a bunch of other really exciting Web2 and traditional brands to help bring them into Web3. We also have spun out products from our product studio, starting with Mojito last year, which is the leading NFT marketplace infrastructure that serves the Sotheby's Metaverse and other notable brand marketplaces around the space, helping large brands and rights and IP holders move into Web3 and the Metaverse. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Aisha. I am the community marketing lead at Maker's Place. Maker's Place is a premium NFT platform for digital art and digital collectibles. We have been around since 2019, and we played a really big role in bringing NFTs to the mainstream with the Beeple 5,000 day sales. We actually minted the artwork. We introduced Christie's to Beeple and played a major role in that. Since then, we have been working with athletes, musicians, entertainers, fine artists from the traditional Web 2 world, fine art world, and bringing them into Web 3. And yeah, we are super excited and honored to be here. Thank you so much.
And my name is Peter Klarnet. I'm Vice President and Senior Specialist in the Books and Manuscripts Department at Christie's, New York, home of course, Beeple. Thank you very much for that. Books and Manuscripts Department, yes, we're not a traditional art department, but we do play in the NFT space. Most recently, we had the pleasure of offering the Birth of Wikipedia NFT for Jimmy Wales in December 2021. And we're looking to do some more select projects in the future.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris Cummings. I'm the founder and CEO of Iconic Moments. We're the first NFT marketplace exclusively for museums and historic and cultural brands. So, we're working with over 25 of the world's top museums and talking with another 150 across 12 countries around how can we help bring an industry that was really impacted by COVID and an industry that's very, very antiquated into Web3 to not only drive engagement digitally, but to drive fundraising and revenue digitally, and to really help create the museums of the future through the blockchain.
Where do you guys think the most exciting opportunity lies right now at the intersection of fine arts and Web3?
Are we going down the line or?
Am I making the rules?
No easy questions, huh?
I would say, I think that in different verticals, like in Maker's Place, we're working with obviously fine art, fine artists and collectors, but we're also working with musicians and entertainers, sports industry. And I think that what's been really exciting and interesting is seeing those verticals kind of colliding and intersecting and the things that can happen with that and how Web3 has kind of been cultivating and nurturing that evolution. So yeah, I'm excited to see kind of like integrations of industries happening and how fine art can kind of move beyond just fine art and kind of taking a different direction that makes it more accessible and democratized to all and more kind of making it so that more people can understand and interact with it.
That's a very, very difficult question. I don't think I have a great answer for. but NFTs for the books and manuscripts department it's a fairly selective area. We don't know how far it'll go. Every situation is unique. Speaking just about the Wikipedia experience, it was very much in one way it was a digital art. It was a recreation of a digital artifact. On another level, it was performance art and something that was interactive. Just to give you a little background, we first started these discussions right around the time that Beeple happened here at Christie's. Jimmy Wales approached us actually with the computer, the iMac that he was using in January 2021 to create Wikipedia. And right around that time, as I mentioned, Beeple blew up, and immediately the conversation came to what would make a really interesting NFT. And we bandied around several ideas. One was perhaps tokenizing the first digital artifact of Wikipedia, which was the first backup that was done perhaps 4 weeks into the site's existence. We quickly nixed that idea. Actually, Jimmy nixed that idea in that citing that this is the work of thousands of volunteers already. I can't personally offer this sort of NFT. So we went back to the first moment of its existence. And basically, he recreated what Wikipedia would have looked like on January 15th, 2001. Simple JPEG, typing hello, comma, world, exclamation point. That is not a digital artifact because at that point Wikipedia had no archiving functions, no backup. If you got rid of the command line, it was gone. So he established that and then took it a little bit further and created a routine, basically the first Wikipedia script that allows the winning bidder to basically recreate the experience of creating Wikipedia, coming up with the categories, figuring out where the articles would lie. And the program, the routine, had a timer that you could essentially set to whatever time you'd like, and then it would reset to the moment one. So you could basically start it all over again and try it again. As I understand, the purchaser who picked it up for $750,000 is extremely happy with their purchase and having a really great time working with it. In terms of where we go from here, in our little books and manuscripts world, we're still trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And suffice it to say, most of the ideas we've entertained, we've pretty much nixed because they come off as contrived or just too much of an intellectual somersault to get where we need to go.
I think that often fine art is one in which it's not that accessible for everyday people to be able to engage with, to be able to have a chance to own. I think a lot of the fractionalization models where you allow someone at a low cost point to be able to participate and really own an incredible piece of art is something that's changing that relationship between the buyer and the art piece in general. I think the idea of evolving the gallery experience digitally, it's still very buzzy. Like, what does a metaverse gallery look like? What does an actual experience of fine art look like? One that replicates or does things new you can't. One that can tell you stories behind the artist and the art itself in a way that is really interesting. These are the areas that I find the most fascinating, right? How can we evolve and make art more accessible and interesting and engaging and do things digitally you can't do in the real world?
To answer my own question, I think it's a few different things. I think that artists have a new opportunity to find patrons in this space and to create personal relationships with their collectors and fans and organize them economically into communities in a new way. And this group of people, that many of whom came from the crypto world, are so excited about digital art and beauty and the idea of collecting, and the Venn diagram overlap between the art world and the crypto community, I think has just produced some really fascinating poetry and some fascinating pieces. And it comes from that demand pull of that patronage drawing out, in many cases, artists to do something that they weren't previously doing and drawing them out into a new medium. And so that creates a lot of really interesting content. And then the other thing I'd say is Web3 itself is an artistic medium or is like a substrate. You look at someone like Pac, for example, who had those Pac tokens that you could burn and then they would turn into ash. right? So he's actually using the blockchain as a medium for art. And there are a bunch of awesome examples of this. We work with Sotheby's, with Pace Gallery, and they're constantly looking for beautiful examples of not just amazing, visual art, but the intertwining of the Web3 substrate with visual art and with those kinds of different capabilities. And that's what's super exciting to me. I mean, we started working with Sotheby's at the beginning of the NFT craze. They were founded in 1741. That's how old Sotheby's is, the very first auction house. And then going into the metaverse so aggressively and early is just incredibly exciting. It's a huge shift, a huge change. They were on the Time list of 100 most influential companies this year, I think in large part because of their work in the metaverse. There's a Sotheby's auction house now in Decentraland where people can actually go and participate in auctions. So I think there's a really exciting metaverse component for people. I think people are going to be doing a lot of kind of commercial and entertainment activity in metaverse worlds, which we're seeing. And that's also going to be a medium without gravity, without physics, without materials costs for artists.
I think also just to add on to what you were saying about artists who are using blockchain as a medium, I think what's been really exciting to see too is just kind of the added level of interactivity and connection that art presented in this way has kind of allowed. Your example of Pac was making me think of Urs Fischer as well, who's a traditional contemporary artist who we've worked with, and he's brought these digital sculptures to the blockchain. But what's really cool about it is that he's actually, when you purchase one of his artworks, you're receiving the source code, so you then can manipulate the sculpture to kind of interact in the way that you want it to interact in, therefore making you also the creator as well as the collector. And I think that in the NFT art world is becoming much more common, and it just makes people feel even more invested and connected with the art that they're collecting. So it's really exciting.
Of course, then we're thinking about, going back to the original question, what can NFTs do for the traditional art world, as in canvas on actual materials? I think it's still an open question. People have mentioned repeatedly that an NFT could work as an authentication tool, as an authentication certificate. I don't know if that's necessarily something that could work for every last piece of art. Do we necessarily need to create an NFT for things that are published in other forms? Is it made more permanent that way? That I don't know. Personally, I think that at least in the art world, and what we've found is that essentially an NFT in this context is our best attempt to lend permanence to the most ephemeral thing that we've ever created, which is digital data. I mean, it's something we can copy, we can delete at will. But here we are, putting it on a blockchain and giving it some actual permanence. If you think about what digital art is, if it goes onto a screen, that's a derivative work. If it's printed on a paper, it's a derivative work. It only exists in code. So how do you make that permanent? And this is the closest we can possibly get at the moment.
Yeah, what do you think about that relationship between the physical and the digital?
Sorry, say that one more time?
No, I was just kind of extending what do you think of that relationship between the physical and the digital in arts and blockchain?
I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, I've seen it done. We did something with Conway West where there was a piece of clothing that also had a 3D digital artwork attached to it. I don't know if they could exist. I don't think they could exist separately. I don't think it's really a substitute for the physical art because it does exist in reality. It already has an existence. So I personally don't see where the really obvious connections beyond perhaps a very sophisticated way of tracking provenance and authentication.
Yeah, I think that some organizations are trying to force this notion of being able to track physical items digitally through the chain. Oh, we're going to put a chip in, we'll put a little code in, we'll do some type of a scannable item. And sometimes the question is, do we already have systems in place that work to do this exact thing? Right? Like that do it in a very efficient way and do it in a way that authenticates, is a painting real? Is a historic document real? And have entire experts whose experience is to be able to make these decisions. But I do think that there are interesting ways where you can take traditional art and put it on the blockchain that does solve real problems digitally. Traditional art has long been plagued by there being kingmakers, right? There is an entire ladder you have to go up for your art to have a sense of value, and you have to play that game. And that game often is in the hands of a couple of people. And the idea really of Web3 is if you can get an entire community to believe in your work and to do so very early, you can really navigate around those power structures that have long been in place that have dictated what is art in terms of its value or not perceived value.
We had a really interesting question come up actually around the relationship between the physical and the digital, working with Pace Gallery on their Phases of the Moon collection with Koons that they're launching soon, because there are these physical pieces of art involved that are actually going to the moon, and you're going to be able to own them, and then you're going to be able to own an NFT that represents your ownership of that piece. And the big question was, do you allow the ownership NFT and the physical piece of art to separate? And what happens when they separate? And the only answer in this kind of decentralized world is you got to let them separate, because what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to even hold them together anyway? The blockchain has no hand with which to reach out and grab the physical world. So the only way you can create those links between the physical world and the blockchain are either through legal contracts or through incentive systems where you incent people to either link them together or break them up and fractionalize them. But once it's out in the world, you can't really control where it goes.
Which poses a really interesting set of questions and potentially issues when you look at the idea of these physical works being sold over the course of the years. If someone makes a NFT of a historic painting that they have, and then 10 years later that painting sells to another collector, does that other collector have the right to be able to create an NFT, and does that shoot the original NFT in the foot? Is that undercutting the entire purpose behind this truly supposed to be digitally scarce, and there to be only one of it? And it's a problem where I think the only real solution is putting that directly into the legal contract, but no one's really aggressively going after this problem. It actually is a really, really big issue that doesn't have a good solution right now.
I personally think that every single receipt will eventually be an NFT. I personally think every single e-commerce store will eventually sell NFTs, and it'll be completely ubiquitous. Basically, what NFTs are is making the internet property ownable. The same way that humans came up with the idea of putting a fence around a piece of land, which added all kinds of new financializable assets to the economy, right? Borrowing, lending, mortgages. People have figured out how to circumscribe a piece of content on the internet and own it, which adds a whole new financial layer to the internet of ownability. And I think all content with value in a digital form will be owned the same way that almost all useful land, physical land today, is owned or claimed. And I think it's going to add all kinds of different assets to the economy. I think there's going to be a lot of DeFi activity, a lot of fractionalization, borrowing, lending, then futures, all kinds of products that sit on top of it. And I think every single piece of art, physical or digital, will have an NFT associated with it. What do you guys think of that?
That's a lot of NFTs.
But I don't even know if they'll still call them NFTs at that point. It'll be so ubiquitous. It'll just be, a receipt or a digital object.
Right. I mean, it's like the NFT is the vehicle almost, right? As anything can be an NFT.
It's a technology.
Yeah.
It's a technology. It's not a foregone set of outcomes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that happening. I think that's happening now. And I think exactly what you're saying is that there is going to be kind of these clear differentiations between fine art NFTs and contractual NFTs. And yeah, to the point where we're probably not going to be calling them NFTs. I remember at Maker's Place in the beginning, we did not refer to them as NFTs. We called them fine digital art and unique digital art. So I think that we're probably going to go back to that, and differentiations are going to become much clearer.
Yeah, I mean, Any other recovering attorneys in the room beyond myself?
There's one.
NFTs at their best are ways of making our systems more efficient, setting permissions and rules in place that can be executed automatically when those permissions are hit, and to avoid the cost of traditional ways of reviewing contracts in general. I think that what you're really speaking to is a way of making our systems more efficient and not having attorneys and other groups charge so much money for something that shouldn't take 30 days of escrow. If it can be done in 30 seconds. It shouldn't take 5 days of review if you can do it in a minute. So yeah, I think that that's why, the underlying core behind the technology is really solid for just, evolving the systems we already have in place.
Feel free to reject this last question, but what's your advice for someone in the room who's in the art world that's thinking about getting into NFTs? What should they keep in mind?
In terms of collecting, in terms of buying, or just getting into it?
Whatever you want.
Well,
I'm not making the rules. Just trying to
as I
add some
advise
structure.
any emerging collector, the most disappointed and bitter collectors I know are the ones who bought it as an investment. Mm-hmm. Buy it because you love it, and if it goes up in price, great. If it doesn't, you still got something out of it.
That's great advice. I would also say educate yourself. Education is key. And I think that that's something that we are somewhat lacking in the industry. And I hope that as we evolve, more and more education is easily accessible to folks, because I think that's so important.
I would say go ahead and make yourself the blockchain or crypto or Web3 guy or gal in your circle of friends or in your business, because everything's going to eventually be on Web3. So you might as well be first, and you might as well be the one who knows about it. The actual barrier to entry is surprisingly low, though we do need more and better education. And you can become that local expert for your crew and help move this whole thing forward.
And I think finally, approach the creation of the art the same way you would in the real world. You're doing it because you love whatever the medium is you're creating. I think too often you see people come in to do NFTs because they think it's just a really quick way to make money, right? That authenticity behind a creation has to be true. Because people can tell what's real and what's not. They can tell if you're authentic. They can tell if the quality of your art is there because you actually believe in the art, or is it just a money grab? And then finally, creating NFTs is easy. Selling NFTs is hard. And really taking time to think through sort of, how do you actually build and drive engagement behind yourself, your work, the story behind those pieces is the most important part.
All right, we are out of time, but everyone, let's shoot our shot and each say our how to contact us. Promote the thing that we're promoting. Send me an email, amanda@serotonin.co, serotonin spelled like the neurotransmitter, and also check out Mojito, the NFT marketplace infrastructure powering the Sotheby's Metaverse and others.
Definitely go check out makersplace.com, subscribe to our drop page, and feel free to follow me on Twitter, AISHACARIF.
And you can find me on Christie's website. My email is pklarnet@christies.com. And look for a new NFT announcement in about 2 hours.
That's a heck of a setup. I don't. You guys can find me. It's chris@iconicmoments.co. Or connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and our website is iconicmoments.co. So if you want to connect with some of the world's top museums and really interesting cultural institutions and national monuments, all wanting to engage in a new form of storytelling and experience, we'd love to connect. Thank you.
Thank you.